Hello, welcome to Epiphany Lutheran Church in Richmond, Virginia. I'm Kevin Barger, the Director of Music Ministry. This is our Music Minute. We're taking a look at the hymns we'll be using tomorrow in worship, the 12th Sunday after Pentecost. You might remember this is that long season of many Sundays after Pentecost, the green season, as it were. We're going to go in order today. So we'll start with our gathering hymn. That's Let Us Go Now to the Banquet. And this hymn was written based on the main idea and key words from a sermon that the author had heard. It was from a high school, a Jesuit high school, where Father Grande was doing this sermon. And there is actually now a monument to Father Grande in El Salvador with the inscription from the refrain of this hymn. This comes from a mass, and the actual hymn itself highlights a welcoming of all poor and hungry to the banquet of justice and good. It was composed in the late 1970s, so it has a little bit more modern feel to it. This is Let Us Go Now to the Banquet. Feel the Spanish kind of rhythms in there, and maybe even add some shakers and some percussion instruments. All right, so the next is our hymn of the day, You Satisfy the Hungry Heart, and this was also written in the 70s, 1976 to be exact, and that's important because this was written for the 41st International Eucharistic Congress in Philadelphia. And the theme was the hungers of the human family. This tune was named Bicentennial because it was written for this contest that they were having for a hymn for the Eucharistic Congress. And being 1976, with bicentennial year, of course, that's where it comes from. This is You Satisfy the Hungry Heart. Next would be our communion hymn, and we're still on the hungry theme that you'll hear quickly. This is We Come to the Hungry Feast, and this was written about 1984, so a little bit later than the first two we did, and it was for a communion liturgy, and it was written after the author heard Gordon Lathrop speaking about the Eucharist as a hungry feast. And this was all virtue and nature of hunger. Hungry for a world of peace, hungry for a world released, hungry for people of every kind. This is hungry that the hunger ceases for those people. It tells of a prophetic coming, if you will. It's leading where the Eucharist leads, and going from the table and doing on behalf of a hungry world. So going forth from this place and feeding that hungry world. We come to the hungry feast. All right, and our last is our sending hymn, and this is O Living Bread from Heaven. And this was a 9-stanza hymn originally. It was called, quote, a hymn of heartfelt praise and thanksgiving after the reception of Holy Communion. This is another Catherine Winkworth translation. She translated 8 of the 9 stanzas. She omitted the 4th. And the tune you will recognize as that of the church's one foundation, maybe a little more so than this, but they were both texts written long, long ago. This is O Living Bread from Heaven. Sort of a soulful rendition. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. I hope you learned something that you didn't know before. Maybe you enjoy one of these hymns. Maybe you have a new favorite. If you're coming for worship tomorrow in person, those services are at 8:30 and 10:30 in the sanctuary. The 10:30 service will be live streamed on our YouTube channel as always. Thanks again for joining me this evening. We'll look forward to being together again next week. Have a good week.